What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel and to another Overwatch League discussion video. With the 2020 MVP candidates now being out to the public, I wanted to make a follow-up video to my predictions from the other week. Before getting into it, I wanted to say that I was pleasantly surprised that the league put 10 people in the ballot this year. Double the number from 2019 is pretty cool, and I appreciate the league's effort to get more people involved and appreciated for that matter. So for today's video, I wanted to give my thoughts on who I think deserves to win the MVP award out of the 10 people we can choose from. Just as a quick refresher, this year's finalists are Alarm, Carpe, Yoben, Krong, Eileen, Fleta, Violet, Void, Yaki, and Exy. I'm sure a lot of you will think differently from me, but there isn't anyone on here in particular that makes me say, hey, why is so-and-so on here? They really don't deserve it. But some people are certainly more deserving of this award than others. That goes without saying, and that's exactly what we're going to discuss today. My plan is to briefly go through every guy in the running to start, and I want to give at least every one of them a little bit of praise before eliminating those who I do not deem worthy. And once we get through every single person, I will tell you who I will be voting for. I'll also throw in a few runner-ups to give you an idea of who else I seriously considered voting for. Oh, and as a heads up, I may be going a bit lighter on details and stats in certain scenarios just because I will be repeating a lot of what I said in the previous MVP discussion if I go too heavy on it. With intros aside though, let's begin. So the first MVP candidate to discuss is Alarm, and some people have really jumped on the hype train for this guy as of late thanks to some of his recent performances, but in all honesty, I would say that he's been nasty the whole year. It's nothing new. Not only has Alarm arguably been the #1 flex support in the league, but his efforts have played a pivotal role in the success of the Philly Fusion. It's hard to explain with words how big Alarm has been for them in 2020. When I think of consistency, he is one of the first players who comes to mind, especially at the support position. The guy is a real nutcase. Ana, Zenyatta, Baptiste, you name it and he will play it at the elite level. Alarm is a best of both worlds type of player. He's the all-around flex support only found in your dreams. There's few people on the planet who can do it as good as Alarm. He has the mindset of a support with mechanical skills of a DPS player. It's a beautiful sight to behold. I've said it before and I will gladly say it again. Alarm is fantastic when it comes to enabling the team around him. His intelligent positioning and team-first mentality makes him as good of a team player as you will ever see. And when it's necessary, Alarm will carry the game. He has the playmaking ability ready and on standby at all times, but unlike some of the other great flex supports out there, he never really gets too greedy. His OG flex support predecessors would be very proud of him. Now this is how flex support is supposed to be played. Alarm has shown true mastery of his position and his team has been thriving. There's no way Philly gets first place in North America without him. The same can be said about their competitive nature against the other top teams. If Alarm won the MVP award, I would not be mad at all. He's not my #1 choice, but he definitely makes my top 5. Next up is Carpe. I've been advocating Carpe for MVP for months now, so I'm extremely pleased to see him make the cut. Carpe's back to his old ways, guys. Now that he's out of Zarya jail for good and the fusion of a stronger team around him, Carpe has come alive and he's back to top form. But unlike 2018, his efforts do not feel wasted very often. When he goes off, it works out. And that's pretty evident by his team's 24-2 record on the year. He's been there the whole time essentially as well. He's taken some games off here and there, but he still has played over 19 hours in the regular season. I would say that's pretty good considering the fact that there's quite a few DPS players on that roster who could be subbed in for him at any time. Carpe is just that good. You always want him in the game. I mean, how often do you sit there and say, man, Carpe really threw? You could maybe argue that some people on this list are a bit more consistent, but one thing Carpe has over all of them is the clutch factor. I will always stand by the fact that I think he is one of the clutchest players in the league, if not the most clutch. You guys remember that stat I showed from a few weeks ago, right? Here's a refresher. During overtime team fights, Carpe has an astonishing 10 final blows per 10 minutes while his team does not have the advantage. And out of 200 some odd fights in this scenario, Philly wins about 60% of them with him in the game. That's a pretty darn good rate, and that further goes to show you how big Carpe comes up for his team in close games. I know some people out there will look at Philly's shortcomings this year to argue he isn't that clutch, but I think it's ridiculous to only be looking at the few times the Fusion have lost this year. Think about it for a second. How many games have the Fusion lost in 2020? If you combine the 3 tournaments, then the total adds up to 5 out of like 30-something wins to go along with it. That's it. There's only been 5 times where his efforts has not been enough to help his team out. Now granted, 3 of those times were in a tournament, but still, it's not like the only intense games they've ever played in have come in the tournament. I mean, look at their recent game against the Shock, or one of their games against Paris for that matter. Weren't those intense games? Yep. Was Carpe pretty clutch in those big games? You better believe it. It's important to look at the majority in those situations. And of course, I've still really loved Carpe because of how crazy he's been on the stat sheet. His totals are still insane. He's top 10 or better across the board for all damage stats, and he's even number 1 in final blows and elims. Carpe is right up there at the top with a few other people that we've yet to get to. Carpe is definitely someone who will be involved with my final decision. Alrighty, now we move on to Choi Yoben. You guys know me, I'm always going to vouch for Choi. He's a machine, I love that guy to death. It may be a new season, but the old Choi has been sticking around. He's just as dominant as he's ever been. The Shock can always count on him when the situation gets dire. I would say you can make an argument he's the clutchest off-tank in the world. Even with all of those insanely talented DPS players and flex supports on his team, Choi still might be the clutchest player on this roster. When I watch the Shock play a close game, he's usually the one that sticks out. There aren't many players out there who can turn around fights when down big, and I'm talking about all positions, but Choi's one of those guys who makes you say, how did he turn that? How did the Shock win that fight? His combined stats per 10 on D.Va, Zarya, and Sigma are also right up there with some of the common suspects at his position. But that's not a surprise, because Choi's a whiz on the D.Va and Sigma. I would say Zarya has steadily improved as well, even if it's not that good still. That's another thing I love about Choi, though, that makes him so valuable. He's a quick learner who is exceptionally good with adaptability. Choi's been the rock of this San Francisco team. With him being the only off-tank on the roster, he's had huge responsibility on his shoulders. His coaches and teammates depended on him so much, and he's almost always delivered for them. Choi is a leader for so many different reasons, and his proficiency is largely responsible for the Shock's second place finish in North America. The recognition he gets from the league this year is well deserved. However, with a heavy heart, I must eliminate him for my potential nominees. It's nothing against Choi, I just think there are some people at his position who deserve it a bit more. Coming up next is Krong. This rookie sensation has played exceptionally well this year. He might have been the only rookie in that Guangzhou starting lineup, but he never really acted like one. That's the thing. Just like his rival Choi, Krong has been the guy Guangzhou have relied on time and time again. He has definitely been the most valuable player on this team when it comes to their success. He's been consistent across every single meta, essentially. What makes Krong so valuable, I feel, though, is his specific playstyle. Krong doesn't play as aggressively as your Choi's and Hanbins of the world. He's more about playing with his team and taking the off angles than going for the big plays himself, and that, in my opinion, has made for a big upgrade compared to Hotball last year. Their styles are literally the polar opposite. Having a less aggressive off-tank has paid huge dividends. It makes the life of Rio and the Guangzhou supports a lot easier. His team is generally staying up longer, leading to more situations where they can clutch out team fights. Krong is the missing piece that they desperately needed in Season 2. They're beating and competing with the top dogs now, which is evident by their Summer Showdown first place finish. What's absurd, though, is that he can carry just as hard as the other elite off-tanks in the game. When he needs to do the dirty work, he will step up to the plate. Don't let the damage stats deceive you. He simply does what he has to. He plays with intelligence, his positioning, his awareness. It doesn't really remind you of a rookie. It reminds you of what a championship DNA off-tank player looks like. 3.6 deaths per 10 on Zarya, D.Va, and Sigma combined. That is really nasty stuff. And it's not like the charge have been dominant all season either. They've had some bumps in the road, but he has remained a constant. Krong deserves all the praise in the world, but he unfortunately misses my top 5 cutoff. Now we have to talk about Eileen. This is one of the finalists who got a lot of crap, I feel. And while I'm not going to say him being here is completely undeserved, I understand why some people weren't a fan of him making it. More on that in a bit though. For now, let's give him the credit he rightfully should be receiving. So Eileen was put into a situation when he had to take over for Nero, who was in a 14-day quarantine, so he wasn't there for the team. And up until that point, Nero was the usual starter, although Eileen did kind of play sometimes as well. So Eileen was kind of just thrown in there, but he made the most out of the chance given to him. Once he started popping off on all sorts of different characters, he never looked back. And as the meta has evolved, so has Eileen. He's added things to his repertoire that I didn't even know he could play. He plays every hero in his pool at an above average level. And let's give Eileen some credit. He is in the exact same situation as 2019 Gushwei. He is the only non-Korean player in that lineup, but he does not let that stop him from finding success. There might be a language barrier, but he still acts like just as much of a leader as anyone else on that Charge team. However, Eileen is one of the last people I would choose from on this list. He's played well, but he hasn't consistently been around, you know? Before Nero had to renew his visa, he was the one on and off the bench a lot of the time. It's hard to say you're the most valuable player when you're not even a consistent starter the whole year. It's only really been since the Summer Showdown qualifiers where he truly has played at the MVP level. The league went a bit too hard with recency bias. I can't say Eileen is the MVP. Now for the 5 remaining guys. Let's talk about Fleta. This guy has made quite the comeback while playing for a different franchise. Fleta was never bad or anything during his Seoul years, but he had some ups and downs. On Shanghai, there really haven't been any of those inconsistencies though. I don't know if it's the system change or maybe he just needed a fresh start, but regardless, Fleta is once again the meta. He is at the top of his game right now. He is realizing his true potential. Right from day one, he has been rolling. Fleta follows a very similar path to Carpe. He is right at the top of the leaderboards. Top 10 or better in final blows, elims, hero damage, and final blows to death ratio. And while his clutch stats are a little worse than Carpe's, he still earns a solid 8 final blows per 10 with a 60+% win rate. Besides the clutch factor though, I think Fleta truly shines with his versatility. Like with Eileen, Fleta plays whatever his team needs him to. He's good on the usual things you'd see from him back in the day, but he's added some new skills to his arsenal recently too. The biggest surprises of that pool have to be his main Tracer, which he has genuinely been top tier on. But unlike Eileen, Fleta's been doing it for a longer period of time, and that's what truly puts him above him in this type of race. Fleta has the better consistency and longevity, and I would say he's the better overall player in general, which definitely makes him more valuable, of course. In my opinion, Fleta has been a top 2 DPS player in the league. He helped lead the Shanghai team to the best record in the league, and it's not hard to see how. Fleta advances to my final selection process without a doubt. Coming in at the number 7 spot is Violet. This guy had a pretty interesting year. At first, he was getting hardcore memed on. He was missing in action during that opening week as Architect started over him at Flex Support. Then of course, we saw him later on when the Shock lost 2 consecutive games as he played a not so amazing Ana. Early on, Violet definitely did not look like an MVP candidate, but sure enough, as time kept on moving, Violet started climbing up through the ranks. He put the past behind him really quick and he popped the hell off. The moments that Baptiste became a staple in this meta, Violet ran out ahead of the pack. He's right up there with his rival Alarm when it comes to being the bloodthirstiest BAP in the league, and the same could be said for Zen. You can really tell that Violet has grown a lot as a player. Those rookie mistakes he used to be making are nowhere to be found. His positioning and overall discipline now completely matches elite mechanics. The moments that the Shock did well in the Mei Melee, nothing has ever stopped Violet. Pretty much every game has felt Jonak or Twilight-esque, you know? His combined averages on all the Flex Support heroes is a sight to behold. Among all players with at least 400 minutes of playtime with those combined heroes, Violet is first in final blows, first in elims, second in damage, and second in healing. That's pretty filthy. Violet very much deserves to be in the MVP race. I like him about as much as I've liked Alarm this year, so he makes it my top 5 as well. Now I finally get to talk about my guy Void. Dear God, was I happy to see him be put on the ballot. It is so well deserved, and I kind of already hinted he would be making the top of my list already when I said that both Choi and Krong were being eliminated. It doesn't even have to purely do with skill or anything. Void simply has been the most valuable off-tank in the game. This is one of the only times I've seen a tank player have a ludicrous season like this. The only other time I've seen this is with Janu in Season 2, but to be honest, Void has been more impressive. He's boasted top tier performances using a larger hero pool. Janu mostly had that monster year thanks to Diva, but Void has been doing it on Diva plus Zarya and Sigma. At this point, I'm pretty convinced that he's a Greek god or something. The sheer level of dominance is unlike anything I've ever seen at the tank position. Only Poco and Tuyu have the same death rate for him on Diva, Sigma, and Zarya combined, but I don't really count Tuyu seeing he doesn't even have 3 hours of playtime yet, and Poco's in-game performances don't really compare to Void's. Void is a leader with the kill participation, but he also has the smarts of somebody like Krong. He knows what he's doing. He makes the intelligent plays. He has the positioning. He makes the peel happen as well. It terrifies me that somebody can be so all over the place while being so darn smart at the same time. This man has only died 448 times in about 21 hours. That's the best among tank players with anywhere near that amount of time. He's so good at playing with his team. He knows when to press the attack and when to hold off. His timing is impeccable, and that is why he is one of my top MVPs 100%. Coming in at the number 9 spot is Yaki. With how good Florida has been this year, it truly did feel like somebody from that team should have made the cut, so I'm happy the league gave somebody from there some attention. Yaki's had one heck of a season, and there really isn't much he's done wrong overall. He's genuinely been solid through most metas. You could especially feel his impact when Tracer had a significant amount of involvement. One of the best Tracers in the league, no doubt in my opinion. Going toe-to-toe with Carpe and Striker is no laughing matter. His Echo has been rather good as well. And I mean, he's got the solid totals to go along with it, so the consistency is there. He's behind Fled on Carpe and all those stats, but still near the top nonetheless. He puts in a ton of work and he comes up big for his team during the close matches. I love Yaki to death, but I can't really let him make the final cut. He may be a valuable asset to his team, but Fled on Carpe have straight up been more valuable. Sorry, but it's the truth. They've carried harder. And last, but certainly not least, is Exy. I find myself pretty torn about my stance on him. I'll start with the good. So he's no doubt one of the best DPS players. I'd argue a top 3 hit scan for sure, and he's taken over the games he's been involved in more often than not. Even in the losses though, he's usually played quite well. But what we remember more than anything is the carries during the big games. The times against Philly in particular were some of the most memorable moments all year for me personally. You've got to be pretty insane to be able to outduel somebody like Carpe, Striker, BQB, KSP, etc. But at the same time, he hasn't always been there for his team. He hasn't always been able to be counted on. He missed a significant amount of time to heal from an injury. He missed like 12-ish weeks, I want to say, in which his team played 9 games without him. And I mean, it's not like Paris have always needed him to play even when he was available. You can't exactly be the most valuable player from the sidelines, you feel me? Exy has been extremely valuable when he has played, but that's the problem. It's not about when or how he's played, it's more about how much he's played. And that's why he does not make it into my upper half. And then there were 5. By process of elimination, we're down to Fleta, Void, Carpe, Alarm, and Violet. Those are the 5 who I believe to be the most deserving out of the 10 people we can vote for. All of them have an equal say. I think a fair argument can be made for each and every one of them. But unfortunately, we can only pick one person. My personal 2020 MVP and the person I am voting for is Carpe. What can I say? I'm a sucker for clutch players, and Carpe is the top dog. Time and time again, he has come up huge for the Philly Fusion. I do not think Philly finished top 2 in the league without him. I really don't. The Fusion could still be good without Carpe, but it's less likely they are title contenders, and I don't even know if they get 20 plus wins. Between the clutchness, the team carries, and his individual achievements, I would say Carpe is the most deserving out of this crowd by a slight margin. I know not everybody will agree with me, but that is my opinion, and that is who I am voting for. If I couldn't choose Carpe though, here is how the rest of the order goes. My runner-up is Void for his sheer dominance, third's going to be Fleta, then it goes Alarm and Violet to finish it off. But that, in the end, is just my opinion on this. I'm sure you guys share different thoughts on this matter, so let me know who you want to win down in the comment section. And as a friendly reminder, fan votes count for 25% of the total votes in the voting process, so be sure to cast your vote on overwatchleague.com or over on Twitter before the end of August. If you guys enjoyed today's video, then I would appreciate it a lot if you could hit that like button and subscribe, and feel free to hit that join button as well, follow my Twitter, and join my Discord for more support. And as always, thanks so much for watching today's video, I really do appreciate it, and until next time, this is ATP, signing out. Peace.